confused, everyone.
Let's get dangerous.
This is so cool.
I know.
It feels so right.
Jake Ciely.
I'm sorry, who is this?
Nice try, Moonman. Pretending not to know. Earth's greatest mastermind.
You just made the list.
I thought you said that was a myth.
Just because it's a myth doesn't mean it's not true.
If you all blindly follow my plan, we may have a chance.
Sure, we talk about it all the time.
Really?
No. Burn.
Game on, you Ducks, and welcome to Week 5 of the Fantasy Football Season Ranks. Breakdown, start, sits, some buys and sells, and another good guest this week. The terrific Chris Harris will be joining us, if you've heard me on his podcast quite a bit. And unfortunately, I don't have the Podcasting in Blue Jeans or Jeans in the Ocean song, so you have to listen when I'm on his podcast for that. But let's talk about some of the big names that are question marks for Week 5, including Bucky Irving for the Buccaneers. Sounds like pretty much assume he's going to be out for Week 5. The fact that he's in a boot and on crutches, supposedly it's not long-term serious, but Week 5 definitely question, maybe another week or two after that. Rachaad White will jump into the RB2 conversation. Probably more on the high end, too. I know people were disappointed and when Bucky Irving took over, and he was very volume reliant, but he's still pretty good after contact. So I think that Rachaad White will be a strong play, though. Sean Tucker will get involved if you're in a deeper league and want to take a flyer on him, just in case anything happens to Rachaad White before Bucky Irving comes back. And speaking of things happening, the Braylon Allen injury is not only just concerning for the fact that he's already out for a while. They're saying that he's getting extra testing done, and it looks bad, question mark. So if you didn't already pick up Isaiah Davis to stash behind Breece Hall, then definitely do so. Breece Hall, more the fact that he might get traded than anything, because Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis obviously aren't the same running back. Isaiah Davis is more like Breece Hall, which I actually think leads to Breece Hall seeing an uptick for himself. And the fact that he won't lose as many goal line touches or short yard touches to Braylon Allen like he was. Okay, let's talk Trey Benson's situation on the IR, out for at least 4 weeks, supposedly returning this season. They said he will be returning this season, but of course, we got to make moves now. I will have if I could say his name, Emari Demercado in front of Michael Carter this week, but it's probably going to be super close, maybe even back-to-back. Would not be surprised if the reason they brought back Michael Carter is because, honestly, they know the both of them. I'll talk to Chris Harris about them as well, but that Carter could be the lead, and in that kind of situation where you have the passing game upside, and especially a 2-minute drill, I'll lean slightly towards Demercado, but I wouldn't expect top 20 from either. Maybe we'll get surprised. Maybe you're desperate and you have to start Demercado. But I would pick both up where you need running back help. And yeah, good luck if you do, because it's gross. Quarterback talk. We have Dillon Gabriel taking over for the Browns. Obviously, it can't get worse than it was for Joe Flacco. It started off okay, but Dillon Gabriel will at least send the ball downfield a little bit more. So stock up for everybody, including the tight ends. David Njoku or Harold Fannin. If you want to wait one more week, although it's starting to skew towards Fannin in the passing game. But again, that might have been a factor of Joe Flacco. Isaiah Bond, if you didn't pick him up, make sure you did in a lot of spots. Like I said, he has Jalen Waddle similarities, and heck, he has the upside talent-wise to potentially be the number one over Jerry Jeudy, if not at least a top 40 wide receiver until Cedric Tillman comes back, but he's out for, quote, weeks. Speaking of tight ends, just as a strategy piece, I know I mentioned this earlier in the season, but I just want to hammer this point home again to remind people. I see a lot of questions about, hey, I have this tight end, I'm thinking about picking up this one. Okay, first of all, do not ever carry 3 tight ends. And I am going to always steer away from carrying 2 unless it's a bye week situation. Kyle Pitts this week, Tucker Kraft this week, or if maybe your bye is coming up next week and you want to plan ahead, that's fine. But the carrying the 2 where it's a Pitts and a Harold Fannin situation, or Juwan Johnson, or down the list again. Like I said, I mentioned this earlier this season, is you're just creating an extra decision for yourself, and it's tight ends. No tight end is going to be good every single week outside of maybe McBride and Warren. No, I'm not even putting Brock Bowers in that conversation right now because he doesn't look 100%. But outside of the elite tight ends, they're going to be up and down. They're going to be up and down. They're going to be up and down. And I remind you guys. So just pick one and ride with it. Don't try to play the matchups. It's similar to trying to play Justin Fields at quarterback. You're going to miss some of the good games and chase your tail and be like, dang it, and then go back to starting them, and then they have a bad game. So you miss 2 in a row, which is just the worst part. If you're looking at defenses, and I know I don't talk about these a lot, but if I look at some names, defense, well, I guess not names, teams that you can possibly get for quite a few weeks going forward. Maybe if you started with the 49ers, although they were a little bit disappointing. The Browns are one of my favorite going forward for quite a while. The Colts are a sneaky one. And then a little higher up the list in rostership, but a nice schedule outside of a game or two, the Chargers. And then the Chiefs have been getting terrific pressure, tops in the league when only sending 4. And a lot of matchups where if they force the other team to pass more, it could lead to some turnovers, even though they haven't had a ton yet so far. Those 4 defenses, if you've been searching and don't want to try to have to pick up a new defense every single week, Browns, Colts, Chargers, and Chiefs. And before we get to the guest this week, give you some buys, sells, and desperation buys, which I'll tell you why in a second there. But still buying on Brian Thomas Jr. The volume is still there. I do have concerns, I've mentioned this before, that it might be the wrist that's bothering him, and that's some of the issues with also not wanting to take on too much contact. But this has to turn around at some point just because he's too talented. And I'm saying that even with Trevor Lawrence at quarterback. But I'm not saying he's going to turn around and get back to top 10. He might need Mac Jones back for that. But he's better than this. They're better than this. So Brian Thomas, I would still buy. I would buy Teteroa McMillan. The volume is there. He's getting elite volume. Of course, it comes down to Bryce Young, similar quarterback play. But some people who have drafted McMillan and were thinking top 20, disappointed by him. So you could get both of those cheap-wise. I would get Chris Godwin before he starts to break out. First game back, saw a ton of use. And I know the pending Mike Evans return is going to cloud up this entire receiving room. And it's part of my argument against a third option being that Quentin Johnston and Keenan Allen and Ladd McConkey, and he's the one falling off. It's hard to have all 3. And I gave you that in the column last week that the last time this happened was Kurt Warner with Steve Breston as his 3. So you need to throw for 4,500 plus yards and 40 touchdowns. All that being said, Baker Mayfield could do it, and people don't really love Godwin coming off the injury, and again, are worried about Mike Evans coming back, so you can get him for cheap. Jameson Williams could have had a huge game last week if not for the drop, and it was a perfect matchup, destroys man coverage, and everything was there for him to have a big game. And this is Jameson Williams. He's going to be an up-and-down Devontae Smith type. Did this last year, too, so don't worry about Jameson Williams, but that's the best part about him is he can be your wide receiver 3 or 4. Derrick Henry is obvious, although until Lamar Jackson comes back, his game could be muted. For sells, Alvin Kamara, although he might be tough to sell right now, but I know there's talk that, and this is why he might be able to, because there's talk that he might get traded. The contract situation makes it a little iffy, but there's been talk that he might get traded to a contender, so he might be able to get some value out of that. If he didn't already sell Tony Pollard, get the heck out of there before Tajay Spears is actually active, which might happen this week. As said last year, has all the volume and barely an RB2. Well, he's not even an RB2 this year, so get away from Tony Pollard if you can. And then Marvin Harrison and Khalil Shakir, similar reason, different styles. Shakir's obviously more consistent, but both are going to be up and down, up and down, up and down. Marvin Harrison, if you can get top 20 value for him because he's Marvin Harrison, do it. Shakir, if you can get top 30, do it. The trade charts are always there in the waivers and the ranks to check over at Draft Sharks. Great source for that. Desperation buys, and this is why I have these. 1-3, 0-4, your season's potentially on the line. You have to take some chances. You have to hope things break right. And it's basically lottery tickets at this point. So buy both the Chases, Chase Brown and Jamar Chase. Honestly, they could both be disappointments for this entire year. Heck, both are benchable. Heck, throw T. Higgins into this. But if something turns and the offensive line starts to get some protection for Jake Browning and we start to see 2023 Jake Browning, we could have value for all 3. There'll be different costs, obviously, but this is what I'm talking about. You have to take chances. You have to take some flyers here, like DJ Moore. I don't want DJ Moore. DJ Moore is clearly taking a back seat, but maybe DJ Moore wakes back up and this offense starts to support 2 wide receivers consistently, and Luther Burden doesn't start to eat in. At quarterback, Kyler Murray. They actually have one of the better schedules for the rest of the season, that being the Cardinals, also going back to Trey Benson. And maybe Kyler runs a little bit more. And speaking of Benson at running back, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, Bill Krosky-Merritt, whichever one you want to call him. Maybe they turn to him. Some of the reports were they were purposely doing this and holding him off until the second half of the season because he's barely played in the past 2 years, actually 1 game since 2023. But maybe that starts to turn. So there's other names out there, but hopefully that gives you some ideas of names that, take the chances. Maybe it turns right. Maybe Mark Andrews at tight end. Maybe he goes on that touchdown run like he did last year. When you're 1-3, 0-4, these are the shots you have to take. But now that we got all that out of the way, and we're going to talk some more of these bigger situations as I do with the Fantasy 5, as I like to call them, the Big 5 topics of the week, with one of the best guests I can have and one of the best in the industry. Hopefully you're listening to his podcast. It's the Harris Football Podcast, and he does a special one with Andy Behrens now, another one that you've heard on this show, and one of the best. So subscribe to all that and make sure you're listening, but you probably already are. And I am wearing jeans, so let's find out if he is. All right, so let's get the answer to the question. Chris, you're on my podcast. Are you wearing jeans?
No. We're on camera right now. I'll show you my legs.
Wow.
No.
You're white as I am.
Well, listen, I'm redhead. I have an excuse.
And well, you also don't get to see. So look, I am. You get to see my jeans. There you go.
I do see your jeans. I'm also in beautiful sunny Los Angeles where we don't have to worry about the weather. So it's everyday shorts weather.
Oh, see, yeah, a little bit different out here. We're actually hit the 70s, which is kind of nice. But there was the 5 topics essentially we were going to talk about, but real quickly off the top, because I finished recording and have to go back and change it. So you all listening, you won't ever hear what I changed. But to ask the opinion of Chris here, but Chris Harris, like I said, one of the best. We do know now that Trey Benson is going to the IR. He is out for at least 4 games. They said he's returning this season. They signed, that being the Cardinals, signed Michael Carter. We seem to have similar opinions on this situation, but what are your initial thoughts hearing that Benson's out? Because obviously a lot of people already grabbed DeMercado, but with the signing of Michael Carter, sway your opinion at all on how you see this backfield?
It sucks. This backfield sucks now. It went from being James Conner and awesome to a bundle of poo. I think Imari DeMercado and Michael Carter share a lot in that they both belong on practice squads in the NFL. They're, relatively undersized backs who've had plenty of opportunities to prove themselves in multiple administrations and have absolutely not done so. And to boldly proclaim that we know how this is going to go. I'm sure there are people on social media who, how do they show up in my feed when I don't follow them? That's a great question for another time. Who will be, pumping up one or the other. I don't know how you could possibly know that until we see it. My suspicion is that DeMercado, had kind of learned the part of the game that third down, constitutes third down, and that just for the sake of living, he'll stay in that world and they'll ask Michael Carter if he wants to try the early down work. But, you got to be pretty desperate to be interested in either one, sight unseen. It's a really good matchup this week. So I guess you could, if you're in Josh Jacobs' hell, you don't have your guy this week, I could see it. I could see starting either one because we don't know how it's going to work out. But long term, I don't suspect, you get clever people telling us, oh, this game about volume. You just got to find the volume. That's all. Fantasy is just about the volume. Like, well, okay, then we'll see. You go get this volume and you tell me how awesome your team is.
Well, here's one for you then. Let me give you just a quick toss-up off the top of your head, and I know you'll have your rankings updated and everything like I will. But the Chiefs split volume, if you had to go both, neither, how would you do Chiefs versus Cardinals in this week? Because you did mention the fact that it is a tasty matchup, although the Chiefs do get the Jacksonville Jaguars as well.
Yeah, the Jags have been frisky on defense. That defensive front is playing pretty well. I don't consider that to be like a crazy good matchup anymore for a running back. That's the right neighborhood. I in the same game, like Tony Pollard and assuming Tajay Spears is back, that's the right neighborhood. Like I put before any of this stuff happened with the Cardinals, my running back ranks go Pollard, Spears, Blake Corum, Pacheco, Hunt. Okay. So like that's the right neighborhood. You could throw Isaiah Davis in there with no Braylon Allen. You can throw, Kendry Miller in there. It's all just gross. It's all an absolute mess.
To use your words earlier, I think you said it's best. If you're in there, you're in running back hell. That's where you are. So, so let's go positive. The original first topic I had for you is still talking running backs, and it's obviously the excitement everybody has for Woody Marks taking over. I'm putting that in quotes, taking over the backfield, and he was a top 5 running back last week, pushing Nick Chubb to the side of it. It's still about a 2/3 to 1/3 split that was in that game. But your overall thoughts, because this is why I like talking to Chris Harris, as everybody knows, you're not just going to get, here's the fantasy numbers. You're going to get, what do I think about the player? Do you think Woody Marks deserves to now be in the RB2 conversation? It is his backfield. What do you think of Woody Marks, the player himself? Because obviously, the offense is going to be issues at times for them in general, but Woody Marks in his own right, your opinion there?
Yeah, I definitely don't think it's like you said, his backfield. Nick Chubb's started the game. I'm not going to say it was blowout work because that was a 6-0 game going into the fourth quarter against the Titans last week. But the second Woody Marks touchdown is a really good run, but like it was over by then. That could have been Chubb easily. So you're going to get a split. This is not a total takeover. I think Woody Marks looks slightly undersized to be a pure main guy, but there are a couple of runs on that Titans tape that were really good. The garbage time touchdown is the one that you go, I don't know how much Tennessee was trying, but stop foot, go foot, the ability to not lose speed when you cut, he showed on that play that he had it. Is he an RB2 this week? Much easier question to answer because we're started the buys and we have some good guys gone. Is he an RB2 like when everybody's playing? I would say pump the brakes, probably not.
Yeah.
But like it's in the neighborhood and it was worth it was worth if the first waiver priority, it's worth spending it. It was worth spending a lot of fab. Like I think you could feel pretty good about grabbing him. The thing I always, part of why you're adding player who's completely really an unknown, unproven is the possibility that he hits the absolute ceiling that he could be for this season. And that's great. And you should be chasing ceiling guys, but we shouldn't just consider that ceiling is all they can potentially offer. We run into that problem way more in drafts because people draft based only on ceiling and don't even acknowledge that. You mean Ashton Genty might not be amazing for the first month, whatever. Now we don't have to worry about it so much. Now we're just looking for solutions. And I think Woody Marks for now is a pretty good solution.
So let me ask you a toss-up I kind of gave, or not so much a toss-up, but a player comparison is probably the better term to put there, is I said, think of like Tajay Spears. Would that be a good kind of profile similarity for you? Because it was like, if Tajay Spears was the lead, I'm with you in the fact that, you put Tajay Spears behind Nick Chubb, and you're like, oh man, well, he's probably going to be more explosive at this point of his career, but ... as you said, I don't think Tajay Spears, just like Woody Marks, would ever be out there getting 80% of the workload.
Or getting all the touches from the 2-yard line, or, and plus Nick Chubb in that Tennessee game had an awesome catch. It was a terrible throw, like way over his head. He somehow reached up and got like, where did you somehow all the juice from your knee wound up in your hands? I don't know how that happens. So like there's a chance that it's not even just third downs for Woody Marks. The Tajay Spears comp is pretty good. I was very hopeful for Spears the 1 year with Derrick Henry. I was like, ooh, if Derrick Henry goes, I'm pretty into Spears. And the Titans immediately kind of told you that they didn't view him that way. They go sign Tony Pollard. They obviously had concerns about Spears' durability, rightly so. I think, we're allowed to think of Marks right now as we imagined Spears could turn out to be until we're proven otherwise. I think the good news in general in season when you're adding players is you don't need to make a call for the entire rest of the season. You just have to make a call for this week. And for this week, I think you start Woody Marks, and then we'll have more information. We'll reconvene. That's why we do shows every week, every day, all that stuff. And we'll, at that point say, now I need to adjust my expectations down a little bit. This week, I wouldn't start him. It feels real easy if you've got some guys on bye to think of Marks like the optimistic case was for a couple years ago for Spears.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's talk about something that we do have a decent sample of, but unfortunately in the quarterback is a 1 week sample. So Malik Nabers done for the year. That he went poof, that unfortunate situation there. And we saw Wan'Dale Robinson was starting to do better things downfield this year, although a little bit different with Jackson Dart versus Russell Wilson, but also Darius Slayton, who's 5 out of his 6 years somehow led this team in receiving because of the weapons they've had. And then Theo Johnson, the previously somewhat heralded tight end that people forgot about, that was at Penn State before Tyler Warren, saw a decent chunk once Nabers left the game. But again, we all go back full circle to Jackson Dart is now at quarterback. How are you looking at this receiving game for the Giants going forward with no Malik Nabers? Because I have to tell you, I was a little surprised at some of the bids I saw in Darius Slayton. I saw him go for 40, 50% of fabs in some spots. That was my response. There you go.
Boy, oh boy. What? It's not, like you're allowed to squint and imagine Woody Marks could be a really good player. Darius Slayton's like 106. He's been in the league. He's had a lot of chances. If Jackson Dart is the key to unlocking Darius Slayton, wow, you truly are pulling one over on me. I am correct in my assertion that you are no longer a Giants fan. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was the second year after Daniel Jones. I told him I would give him the 1 year when they drafted him, and I was like, nope, I'm done. That's exactly
You're
what
out.
I thought.
Yeah. I would be more, Dart was a nice little burst of energy to the offense and obviously has some mobility. But like the minute we go to a can't throw mobile guy, we're right back to Daniel Jones, and that didn't work.
Yeah.
The reason the Giants beat the Chargers is the Chargers tackles are gone. And finally that defensive line for New York could actually get pressure that they hadn't gotten for the three. The Chargers were a disaster. They turned it over. They gave the Giants short enough fields where the Giants could take advantage. And yeah, there's a couple of drives where you could see it. It was okay, but really nothing down the field. And I don't know that, Jackson Dart, everybody knows Jackson Dart shouldn't be starting NFL games right now. Everybody knew as a prospect, he was among the most raw prospects in this draft and for a couple of drafts. And so like, it's almost, are you going to ruin him? I don't know. I think that sometimes that's just about the kid, how much he can take, but he's not ready. He's not ready to make receivers exciting for fantasy. It's like, again, if you're in a totally emergency situation, I would probably prefer Wandale because I at least think there's short passing available, and that's usually going to be Wandale. And I ranked Darius Slayton lower than Wandale, and not in any kind of excited way, because Slayton is going to have 4 games the rest of the year where you go, man, I wish I'd started Darius Slayton. And all the other times you'll be like, oh my God, I'm so glad I didn't start Darius Slayton.
I'm laughing because I made that argument. I was like, if you could tell me which 4 games, sign me up. But I don't know how anybody could do that. So the bid that I went more aggressive on, and I'm curious your thoughts here. So another one went poof, and that was Tyreek Hill's knees. If I could say it correctly, Tyreek Hill's knee went poof. I think he was just in so much of a state of shock. And Nicole actually was the one that said it when it happened, that's why he was smiling and waving, just because like his brain wasn't even processing like what just happened to his knee as it exploded out the side. But now we have Malik Washington stepping up, and I know Westbrook-Akina is there, and he got a little bit involved after Hill left the game. But I think Washington profiles for the Hill void. And no, for everybody out there, I'm not like, oh my God, Malik Washington is going to be a top 20 wide receiver. But to your point with the Slayton, is like we've seen Slayton, we know what he does, and we know what he can do. Malik Washington at least has Tua, which I would take as a passer over Jackson Dart in the offense as of right now. And if Malik Washington can be 70, 80% of Tyreek Hill, we're talking about a wide receiver 3 versus Darius Slayton, as you said, who might pop off 3 or 4 times. What are your thoughts with this? And then, of course, not to shotgun a question on you, Chris, but I know you can handle it. We have to throw in, well, what if Darren Waller is really back and Darren Waller is just dominating
Darren
end
Waller
zone targets?
Really affect what the fate of the wide receivers. There should be plenty of work. And Jalen Waddle is there, and so, like, at this point, I would be planning on starting Jalen Waddle for this week. Like, again, unless I'm making a trade, I don't need to make a pronouncement that here's exactly what Jalen Waddle is going to be, and you definitely can leave him in your lineup the entire rest of the season. I might change my opinion on that in 2 weeks. I don't know. It's possible. You don't have to make that call right now. For this week, you're using him and see how it looks. Darren Waller, I think the same thing. Like, we do this with tight ends every single year. Where I
know, that's why I wanted to ask you, because you hate tight ends as much as I do.
I hate tight ends, and we don't draft them early, and we're smart. Like how the Brock Bowers first round bros are in shambles, obviously. They're going to point to the knee. They're going to be like, oh, it's the knee. That if the knee hadn't happened, it would have been a good pick. Like, rock on, brother. So, like, we're going to find someone, and great. This week we found Waller. We don't need to commit to Darren Waller for the full season. I don't think that's in the contract when you sign Darren Waller off the waivers. I'm going to use him this week, because I'm going to see how it looks, because there's some volume up for grabs. Malik Washington, part of this is interesting. We're both in the, what's it called? The Stack League that they're, the Reddit league that they're making public and interviewing us all week by week and, all that. So we were talking, I was on the podcast yesterday, and we were talking about the bids in that league. I don't know if you saw that Ben Gretsch bid $59 for Malik Washington.
Yeah, I did.
And I was the second highest bid at 11. That's never where you want to be. But I think what it reflects is the upside. Sure, if he's Tyreek Hill, you did a really smart thing. Pay whatever you can get to get Tyreek Hill. I think everyone else in that league suspects maybe that you're getting a little ahead over your skis, and probably he's not. Like, there are times, I've said this in a bunch of places, there are times when I watch the Dolphins and I see a little jacked up short guy catch a pass and I'm like, ooh, Tyreek Hill. And it turns out it's Malik Washington. I think we all have that experience. They sort of look similar. They have single digit numbers. Like which one is that? And then, and you go, okay, that guy looks pretty fast and like a really great athlete. But I think there's a reason why it's mostly screens and handoffs and 1 yard passes. Like he's so far hasn't shown he runs a really good route. I don't think I can't tell you I've grinded a lot of Malik Washington tape to tell you he's incapable, but the fact that he hasn't done it to this point makes me think maybe that it's not in his bag, the way Tyreek is obviously a great route runner. So I understand what Ben is thinking, that he's trying to get the absolute smash home run best case, but I don't think it's likely. I think it was worth an ad. I think he was my number 3 waiver ad of the week. I saw your column on The Athletic. You had him pretty high among receivers, like among the ones you'd add the highest. Sure. Yeah. And if you're in a total jam this week as like an emergency wide receiver 3, I'm with you. I'd pick him over either of the Giants, but you don't have to commit to the full season unless you're Ben and you paid $59.
Actually, I had Wandell one spot in front, but I was like, whichever way you want to go. I went Iu Manor, Dobbs, Wandell, Washington, Slayton this week. And I'm just kind of like, it's not even that great of a week for wide receivers, to be honest.
Yeah.
Speaking actually of things that haven't been, how that for a transition I wasn't even expecting. Things that haven't been great at wide receiver. Ladd McConkey. Now, this is interesting because you could look at it a couple different ways. You could argue the fact that he's still out there the most. He's still getting a ton of opportunities. It's just not connecting. But that's the argument people make for Brian Thomas and people make for other wide receivers in the same boat. And I go back to so I wrote, I know you read the waiver column, so I'm sure you saw it when I was talking about not going crazy for Luther Burden, because it's rare, if ever, like 5 times in NFL history, that 3 players from the same team catch 1,000+ yards. It just doesn't happen. And unless you thought Caleb Williams was going to be throwing for 4,800 yards, get the heck out of here. Same thing with Justin Herbert. I just think the question here, Chris, is that nobody expected Ladd to be the one left out. It was Quentin Johnston's probably not a thing, but now he is because he learned how to catch. Keenan Allen woke back up from 2 years ago. Well, so looking more like from 2 years ago. Ladd was not supposed to be the one that's being left out. What are your thoughts here? Are we buying low on Ladd? Or are you just saying, you know what, this is just a different Chargers offense, and unfortunately for Ladd, he is the one left out?
He won't be the one left out every week. The answer is going to be, you're right, that 3 receivers on the same team are not going to be fantasy stars. What's going to happen over the long sweep of the season is that in 2 of the next 3 weeks, we're going to get a Ladd week. And then we're going to go, Quentin Johnston. And then after that, we're going to get a Keenan Allen couple of games in a row, and everyone's going to go, oh no, Ladd McConkey. You're right. This is the problem with the NFL right now. The problem with fantasy and receivers right now is there just too many of them. Every team has too many of them. They're all really freaking great players. Like there's no those 3. I wouldn't have said Quentin Johnston was a great player. He's obviously a good athlete, and now he's turning in, looks like a pretty good player. And that is replicated around the league. It just means we have like 5 guys we can trust at receiver, and then 57 wide receiver 3s. and Allen and Johnston just haven't hit the wide receiver 3 portion of their lives yet this season, but it's going to happen. Now, is that the same thing as I would buy low on Ladd? I feel philosophically, I believe what I just said. You'd have to be buying pretty low. And I think honestly, the reason to be, I was very into Justin Herbert this year. I had him as a flag player. I was very gratified by the first few weeks. Those tackles being out made such a difference, and that offense looked completely unworkable. And even the Amari and Hampton stuff, I don't know how replicable if the tackles aren't there. And so now I'm looking at all the Charger stuff and I'm like, ooh, maybe I should be selling. If Joe Alt's going to be out for 6 weeks, maybe I can't really sell Ladd, but I could sell Keenan Allen, my eldest son. I don't want to. I could sell Quentin Johnston.
You could sell Marion.
You could sell Marion. It's much more of like a second order problem that he has.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, apparently the market's going crazy for Marion. I would say I would give up like a borderline top 100 type player or a couple of them for Ladd, and buy low in that way. But I don't think I'd want to give up fantasy starters for him.
Okay. All right. So this is, I felt like as I wrote this question, it felt like a Chris Harris type question. I'll just admit that. Like, it was, because I've been on your show talking ranks before, and it's kind of like with the thought process here. And you could argue the right move. Actually, you don't even have to argue. If you were looking in hindsight, the correct move last week was to bench Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. So far, like, technically they were on waivers because we're talking about wide receivers 60s, 70s, and 80s is where they ranked last week. It's been beyond gross with Jake Browning. This is not 2023 Bengals. This is not 2023 Jake Browning. The offensive line is abysmal. So the question I have for you, Chris, is how far are we going with Chase and Higgins and even Chase Brown at running back where, you could make the argument to bench all three, but like at some point it kind of feels wrong, ? To go too far with it?
You don't bench Jamar Chase ever if he's active. It's just not the way I play. It's not the way you play poker. Sure, you can go all in on 3-5 suited. Sure, I guess you can do whatever you want. It's your poker hand. But I just don't think that's not the money-making way to play. I just think Chase has been very close. The long pass interference against Denver, he's been close to making big plays. I just think that's not really even a serious conversation starter. Higgins and Brown are closer. If we weren't in bye weeks, they'd even be closer. I can't imagine you have too many teams where you have such surplus, that you have like, oh, darn, I've got 5 running backs that are in the top 30 this week. I guess I'll have to sit Chase Brown. Sure. In that case, sure. But like mostly I think you're continuing to play him. And Higgins I have the least amount of conviction about continuing to play Higgins. But we also shouldn't draw that many conclusions based on Vikings Broncos. These are 2 of the 3 best defenses. The Browns are coming up again for them too, at some point. The Lions are pretty good defense, but they're not. They will allow yards. They will allow points. I think mostly I don't want to rush out and buy Jamar Chase necessarily, unless I will if someone's willing to give him away. Like, I've got Tyler Warren and Tony Pollard, and someone goes, "Here's Jamar Chase." I go, "Yes, obviously I will do that." Barring a sane situation, maybe I'm not feeling like I need to buy, but I think I know you start Chase, and I think mostly you're gonna look at how you're gonna rank among the crap at running back. How's Chase Brown gonna rank like 43rd? Like he just can't. So I don't know. Like I can't play the Titans guys over him. I can't play the Chiefs guys over him. I can't play the Cardinals guys over him. It's just
I'll give you one.
I'm not wired. Yeah.
Would you play apparently Mike Vrabel's favorite player, Ramondre Stevenson, over him?
I have them side by side with Brown one spot ahead.
Okay.
So like that's real close. In any sort of PPR situation though, no, you go Chase Brown. But like, how about Trevion Henderson? That's also a question because I think Henderson it's close enough where I go, listen, if you just want to take a break and some of this comes down to psychology. I just don't want to look at this anymore. I don't want to deal with this anymore. Some of it does. People are just, I don't want to root for him and be disappointed again. If I miss a good game, I can live with it. You and I have said this many times on my show. You've been coming to my show 10 years. Like, sometimes it comes down to, will it piss me off more if I start him and he messes with me again? Or will it piss me off more if I leave him on the bench and he goes off? That's your answer. When it's kind of close, I think that's your answer. If you can like look in your heart and say, you know what, if he goes off on my bench, great. That's a problem for next week. Me this week, I don't want to freaking deal with it. Like, I understand that.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, that is something we've been saying for quite a long time. I can't believe it's already been 10 years. All right, so as I want a little fun for you before I get out of here. So I always do fun rankings in my rankings column. This week was 90s and 2000s movies that didn't have sequels. So that's what I ranked. Like, doesn't necessarily mean like it was adapted from something that can count. So like, do you have a favorite movie from the 90s and the 2000s? Like I threw in like District 9, Fight Club, Braveheart, ones like that, but that don't have a sequel. That's like the top of your list.
When you say the 2000s, you don't mean the 2010s, you mean the aughts.
More the aughts.
More the aughts.
I cheated with one in the 2010s. That was 2013, but that's the only one.
There Will Be Blood. That's an easy.
Okay. Yeah.
There Will Be Blood. That's an easy, like, cinephile. If you say There Will Be Blood, nobody can get mad at you. Like, I don't know. I don't know if that's really my favorite movie, but yeah, it's up there with my favorite movies for sure. I actually, 2010s, I would probably say like Inside Llewyn Davis, that Coen Brothers movie. I love that movie.
Really, I never saw that one.
Oscar Isaac as like a folk singer.
Yeah, I have the bucket list that one.
It's so good, man. It's such a good movie. It's Oscar Isaac is amazing in it. It's very funny, but it's also sweet and heartbreaking. And he's a jerk in it, and it's really.
I actually love Oscar Isaac, one of my favorite actors.
And Coen Brothers. Who doesn't like Coen Brothers?
That is very true as well. All right, one more fun one before you get out of here. You have to pick your poison here. All right, Chris, you have to pick one of these choices. They're all painful choices. So, as of today, you have no more waiver moves left for the rest of the season. You're done. You have the team that you have. Your second choice is your quarterbacks are only Trevor Lawrence and Bryce Young for the rest of the season. That's it. Your third, and I did this specifically for you because you're a music guy, the only kind of music you can listen to for the rest of your life is EDM.
Well, no, that's out. so out. That's not even that's not the poison that I would take. You could probably cut off limbs, and I would not take that one. I would probably take the quarterbacks. Trevor Lawrence. I could get by with Trevor Lawrence probably. I want to be able to shoot the moon on some waiver situation that we have no idea is going to happen in a month. It would be really bad not to be able to make that adjustment because I feel like half of what we do is draft and then half is roster moves and stuff. And I think I would find a way to survive with the Lawrence Young combo. I would probably lose, but I would lose less painfully than having to listen to ADM.
Yeah, that is very true. I knew there was no chance you would pick the third one. Chance. But hopefully for everybody out there, there's no chance that you don't already know who Chris is. And if you don't, rectify that at Harris Football. Listen to his podcast. Check out all his work over the site as well. As you can tell, one of the best in the business. And always appreciate him coming on, even if he's in shorts and I'm in blue jeans. Appreciate you, Chris.
Thanks, Jake. It was fun. Anytime you want me, I'll be there.
And once again, thanks to Chris Harris. As I said, one of the best in the business for coming on the podcast this week. Make sure you're checking out his stuff and the updated waiver column now that we have that Trey Benson news. And ranks will be up there over The Athletic. You can get your questions answered. Not asked. You're the one answering the questions. You're asking, I'm answering, to make that clear. Also, if you haven't seen, we have our Discord live chat on Thursday. Well, mine is on Thursday, 10 a.m., and I do it with video as the Sunday morning one I do from 11 to 11:30-ish, depending with the international games now. And we have people chatting all throughout the week, so you can get your questions there too until Friday with the updates of more injury news because it's week 5. So why not have a ton more that we have to deal with? Okay, bye.